ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to, for the first time, have here on the Jim Cornette Experience a man who throws caution to the winds and potentially could get involved in my legal issues. No, he has been a wrestling fan since he was a kid in the Carolinas. He has been a wrestler since he was a kid in the Carolinas. He's wrestled for every major company in the world since then. And he's been in front of and behind the camera and holding the microphone. He's done it all. And he's a hurricane coming through, ladies and gentlemen, Shane Helms. Plus, you got the great Twitter. Shane, thank you for being on the program.
It's my pleasure, man. Was the throw caution to the wind? Was that a hurricane pun or was that accidental?
Well, you know, I was trying to come up with windbag type of analogies. And
windbag.
Well, at least I'll win. No, there you go.
Yeah, nice talking to you guys. I guess I'll go now.
Hey, you even before we get off on what I wanted to talk about, I forgot you also hosted not only the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Legends Fan Fest. I hope to Greg I said that right. A couple years in a row, and were a great MC. But also you tried to pilot that fiasco of a roast of me in Winston-Salem a few years ago.
Well, the one where nobody knew it was a roast but me and you?
Yes. I think at first you were like, is it that they're scared to say anything really strong about you, me, for fear that I would eviscerate them on the comeback? And then it became apparently nobody's even watched the Comedy Central roast or even the goddamn Dean Martin roast.
Yeah, well, I went into it knowing full well that you were going to be the last guy on the mic. And so, I mean, I knew what I was getting into. But so, I mean, you still, if you're doing a roast, you got to go out there and throw your shots and then take it on the chin when it comes. But I guess, like you said, those guys didn't know, and they're acting like we're there to honor Jim Cornette. So I had to get on. At one point, I had to get on there and go, we're not here to honor Jim Cornette. Fuck Jim Cornette. You know, well,
Rick caught on. Ricky Morton and Stan Lane kind of got it a little bit. Ricky Morton just got up and said fuck a lot and got the people popped. But I think Bobby Blaze and Buddy Landell, bless him, they started. It was like they were eulogizing me. I was sitting there on stage and I felt like just kind of wallowing over sideways and being in the coffin there so they could eulogize me because they were saying such wonderful things about me at the roast. You had it. You were a great MC. You could do a Comedy Central thing or whatever. I'm nominating Hurricane Helms or take over Tosh.0. I mean, let's face it. After 10 years, Daniel, he's getting stale. Time for some new blood.
There you go. I appreciate it. Coming from somebody like you, I appreciate it.
Well, last week, we'll touch on this first, but we're going to talk about wrestling and comic books and everything else. But you were kind of peripherally why I got roasted and drank the tears of a lot of really right-wing people. You were going back and forth with Baby Doll, and in a respectful way, and nobody was yelling at anybody, and I didn't even yell at y'all. They got mad because they didn't know she was Baby Doll when I called her Doll. But
that was the best part of the whole thing.
Yeah, that was the best part of the whole thing. I've known her for 35 years. I've called her Doll for 35 years. But on International Women's Day, it was fucking chaos. But tell what you were trying to say. You're not as extreme as I am. I'm calling for fucking mandatory government buybacks and meltdowns and fucking excommunicating people to the state of Montana and shit. But you've got some realistic and sensible ideas and suggestions. And it's just some people won't listen to them.
Yeah, I think it just comes from a place of fear for a lot of people. They aren't bad people, but it's been drilled into their head all of their lives that we need to be prepared for some kind of government takeover. So, the whole Second Amendment, the right to a well-regulated militia, like I really can't foresee a future in where we're having to actually go to war as citizens with the U.S. government. And maybe in some kind of Terminator future that might happen. I hope it doesn't, because we will lose. They have stealth bombers, and I don't care how many handguns you got. We're not going to beat the U.S. government. And that's just a weird mindset to have anyways. Like, I'm going to arm myself against the U.S. government. That kind of sounds like a treasonous kind of mindset to have. But
the Patriots are the ones that most want to do the most unpatriotic thing that you can do in case something happens. That's always in case something happens, ignoring that things are happening right now that we probably should address more importantly.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, it's a place of fear. I understand, wanting to defend your family and all that, but uh, a gun isn't a defensive weapon. It's an offensive weapon. A defensive deterrent at best, maybe, but that a gun is used for offense. You're using that to kill something. It's not. It doesn't have any practical uses other than to kill. So, on that side of the argument, they're like, yeah, you can kill somebody with a butter knife or whatever. I'm like, yeah, well, let's try to make murderers work a little bit. Let's try to make it harder for them. Right now, it's incredibly easy in this country to get weapons. And I know I have a few. That's how I know. I went to a gun, not that I was ever a super gun enthusiast, but I understand like the feeling when you hold a gun and you go to a range and you shoot something. There's a feeling of empowerment there. It's cool. It's like driving a fast car. It's like being in a super fast airplane. There is a little adrenaline rush. But the difference with me is I was like, okay, that shit's over. Now I'm going to go live my real life. I don't carry it home and start doing all kind of crazy shit with it. And I don't feel that the average citizen needs M16 or these weapons that can be used in, a type of assault that could kill 20 people in a few minutes. I don't believe we need that sort of thing. And I think any kind of history has shown that human beings are the most violent species in the history of this planet. All else, we kill for fun. We kill for sport. We have serial killers. We are the most violent creatures on this planet. Giving us weapons is not going to make us magically peaceful. It just isn't. I don't understand that concept that more guns are going to help anything whatsoever.
Can you also, where is the disconnect with people who don't understand the difference between, okay, we're not going to take your pistol, we're not going to take your shotgun or your rifle, whether you use target practice, whatever, we're taking your AR-15 or assault rifle, etc. What is the difference between that and a bazooka or of RPG or a hand grenade? Are we for hand grenades for 19-year-old kids or whatever? I don't understand why they equate even the Second Amendment with stuff like that. That I don't think law enforcement ought to have that shit. I don't trust them with it.
I mean, it'd be nice if they didn't, but there's a reason that even the police officers now, they're having that. I mean, you see some of them, they look straight out of the military. And there's a reason for that, because we have created, and this isn't recent, this has been going on. There's been a domino effect that's been going on for decades. It's the law of supply and demand. We have flooded this country with guns. And because there are so many, they're no longer expensive to get. They're very cheap, whether on the legal market, they're even cheaper on the black market. Like, Jim, I went to a gun show one time. Everybody's just selling guns. There's no license. There's no and I'm not talking about, the people that are, the vendors, they're doing their paperwork. They got it. But I could go there and sell my gun to just anybody. And there's nothing, no paperwork, no trail. Who knows what's happened? There's really a lack of accountability for these guns. I don't know what the solution is in terms of how do we keep track of it, but maybe gun companies can put like serial numbers like on the inside of the barrel somewhere super hard that we know where this gun comes from, and we can track it from the manufacturer to the owners to whoever, whatever murderer came along and shot all these people. And let's find out what happened. How did this happen?
I got one for you.
Go ahead.
I got one for you. In the state of Kentucky, and I talked about this on a show last year when it was on the news. In the state of Kentucky, some way or another, their regulation states that when they confiscate guns at crime scenes and involved in crimes and what are all the guns that the state police collect in the course of a year, right? Uh-huh. They are in a special private sale only to licensed gun dealers. They sell them again. They have a sale. It's closed to the public. Only licensed gun dealers can come in, but they take these guns that they've collected at crime scenes, etc. They sell them in this big fucking gun fest they have somewhere at the state capitol, probably in Frankfurt. And guess what happens? A good portion of those guns show back up being confiscated in other fucking crime scenes. That's how stupid we are.
Yeah, that's just it's amazing, but I'm not surprised that this is still going on. I mean, if it doesn't seem sometimes like our government really cares that we kill each other. As long as there's money to be made. Like if they're taking money out of the government's pockets, that's when they'll step up. But you go back to like even when cigarettes came out, like they've known for decades that shit would kill people. They didn't care. They're making money. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with all of that. It's the same thing with the guns. It seems like they don't care as long as they make money. And guns are big business in America.
And that's the thing is that not only do the gun manufacturers make hundreds of millions of dollars, but obviously they have to be because they're giving tens of millions of dollars to the mostly Republican, but even some Democrats.
Mm-hmm. Yes, both sides.
And then if somebody does something, as it just did in Florida, they'll file a lawsuit to block it because the Second Amendment, God-given rights, the Second Amendment, the second change that we made to the God-given document, that was second out of 30 changes that we've made in just a couple of 100 years, to like abolish things like slavery and to recognize that women can vote. And first we could drink, then we couldn't, then we could again. All the other changes that they have made to this document written by God that cannot be changed, the Second Amendment, which was written for muskets, right? That's what drives me crazy is they say it's not a God-given right. God didn't write the Constitution. The people that wrote the Constitution signed all that shit. And even they said, and we probably, Jefferson, was it not, said we should probably revisit this every 19 or 20 years as society changes.
Yeah. Of course, and we should be changing. Like if you're the same person you are when you were in high school, like I would question your life. What did you really do with yourself? And I just mentioned that because only recently someone told me, "So man, you've really changed since high school." And I was like, I fucking hope so. Damn, I graduated. I was 17 years old. I'll be 44 this year. I hope I have grown as a person and become better. Maybe I became worse. I don't know, but.
Usually it's mentally it gets better and physically it gets worse, but you do change.
Yeah. And you have once again you've proven that even us Southern boys can defy stereotypes just because you have a good logical viewpoint. That's why I've always liked following you on Twitter. I was sorry I had to block Dahl and Brian. By the way, that's where I didn't yell at Dahl. I just blocked Dahl because I just couldn't take the from somebody I like. I couldn't take. Yeah, she was still sending me some things. I kind of just stopped replying. She kind of leans into the what about law-abiding citizens, and that's a term I've kind of had enough with because it's such a weird thing. Like I don't know anybody that hasn't broken a law. There are 1,000 laws on the books. Like you text when you drive, you speed, you've jaywalked, you've littered. There been some point in your life where you broke a law. Now, I'm not comparing those laws to murders. I'm just saying there is a law and you broke it. So this term law-abiding citizen is so stupid, because everybody's a murderer until they're not. Or everybody that has murdered somebody wasn't a murderer at some point.
Yeah,
they were innocent. They were a law-abiding citizen at some point. Like, who gives a shit if you're a law? Like, it's not going to make your life any harder to make you be more responsible for your guns. It shouldn't be that harder anyway.
The only reason
you a better person.
The only reason that people need guns to protect themselves is because a lot of people have a lot of guns. So if we started on the path to maybe, as Ronnie Garvin said one time to a guy at the gym. He said, the guy said, how could I lose weight? How could I get in shape like you? And Ronnie said, how many times a day do you eat? And the guy said 3. And he said, how many times a day do you shit? He said 1. He said, reverse the procedure. If we started doing something now about getting some of the miscellaneous clutter out of the ground clutter out of the way, at least maybe for future generations, but only if you outlaw guns, only criminals will get guns. Besides the really crackpot patriotic folks, a lot of people tend to say, well, criminals aren't going to obey laws. Or Chicago has the strictest gun laws. Hammond, Indiana, 12 miles across the border, doesn't, though. So they just pop over to Hammond. But only criminals will have guns, and then we're all fucked. No, in any of you people's lifetime, we're not going to get rid of all these guns. But if we started now for future generations, it might be a bit smarter than us. But in the meantime, we can get the really deadly shit as quickly as we can out of the way. But why not make it harder for the criminal, For one thing.
Yeah.
The problem is not
that's all. That's
get the guns. The problem is that everybody can get all the guns they want.
That's what I want to do. I just want to make it a little harder for the criminals. I don't want. I mean, if it's a little bit more difficult for Joe Blow to get a hunting rifle, okay, that's fine. If that saves lives, then just do that. It shouldn't be that. I mean, it won't be that difficult. You know, I'm not a hunter. I got friends that do. So that's just never been my thing. I put up something the other day. I don't know if you saw it, but it was like, I've never walked into a house and seen an animal's head hanging on a wall.
Yes.
I immediately didn't want to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and it could be some really great people. I mean, it's just not my thing. And I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, but I'm allowed to think it's weird. You know, I'm not going to get up early in the morning, cover myself in deer piss, and go climb a tree to shoot an animal in the head. That's not what I want to do. And that's okay. It's okay if you do, but I'm okay to think it's weird. And I always get this when I say that too. It's like, well, you eat meat, don't you? And I go, yeah, I eat French fries too. And I'm not trying to be a potato farmer. It's just not something I do, you know. But I can't say that no more because now I am on a farm and I am picking some damn potatoes. So
well then, okay. Look at what I always say is if I had to kill my own meat, I'd be a vegetarian. It's a job. It's like cleaning out my septic tank. Somebody has to do the job, but it doesn't mean I have to or want to. And be honest, and
I don't think I would enjoy it.
We talked here on the show a couple weeks ago that we figure, all right, chickens, pigs, and cows have lost the lottery in this situation, and they have been named pretty much the food. If you kill and eat any other animals past that, you're starting to just do it because you want something dead. You know, nobody goes to Morton's for the horse meat. Or with the dog eaters. I had a big problem with the dog. I got banned off Twitter for a week for the dog eaters.
For what? Eating dogs?
I suggested that President Shithead ought to bomb South Korea while he's at it because I found out that they have a dog meat trade and they torture and kill 2.5 million dogs a year so they can eat them over there. This was a big controversy a couple weeks ago on the show.
That's crazy.
They banned me for suggesting, of course, the bombing of a nation. But I responded that Twitter, who takes up for the Russian attempts to sway our election, also now endorses dog eating. So I have that adverse relationship with Twitter. Let's talk about some wrestling for a minute, because you've taken us kind of a spot that I had at one point. I don't know if you know about this. I was once the world's youngest veteran, and now because you started when you were 15 or 16, and we've just seen you forever, and you're still a kid to me, but you're the world's youngest veteran. You've seen a lot of shit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I got into business when I was 13. I was doing odds and ends with a company, just doing things. I actually started helping booking them. I was helping book talent, helping them book the show. At age 15, I was a referee for a year. I got to do, work with Ricky and Robert on a match, a couple matches, Ivan Koloff, guys like that. And then at 16, I had my first match. 1991 was the year I had my first match. But yeah, I am kind of I had a match. We were in Europe maybe a year or two ago. I was 40, so it was 3 years ago. I'm 43 now. And Al Snow's in the match, and he's cutting a promo at the end. And he's talking about how great it is to still be in there with all these young guys. And he's like, young guy this, young guy that, young guy Hurricane. And I'm going, I'm 40. So, yeah, I'm in that weird phase where people still think I'm young, but I'm definitely not. But, it's been it's been great the whole time to be able to survive. So survival is hard in this industry.
You came up at kind of a perfect time because you're being from North Carolina and being about that age, right about the time that Crockett Promotions in the 80s was really hot and dominating the state. You were right there to see it as a fan and see the best talent in the world and know what this shit's supposed to look like. And then, when you got in there in the Carolinas, even at that point, they were starting to produce a lot of talent, so, but, who did you, when you were a kid, when you were a fan, who were you a fan of, or who did you want to emulate? Like, if you were in Memphis, you wanted to be Jerry Lawler, but there were so many top guys in the Carolinas. Who was your favorites?
There were so many, because I started watching it so young. It's my earliest memory of television is actually watching pro wrestling. It's not Bugs Bunny or Woody Woodpecker. I just remember watching wrestling with my dad. My dad was a big fan. And so I just watching it with him. And I was just such a fan of everybody. I'm talking about it. And I would study even the enhancement guys, what they called the job guys back in the days or whatever. I was a fan of just like everybody. And I was just, I guess subconsciously, I was planning to be a wrestler early on because I would just pick up little things. And there was some, I was starting to notice that some of the enhancement guys were better than some of the other ones. Like George South, like, hey, this is going to be a decent enhancement match as opposed to some of the guys who would come out there and get murdered. But my first early favorites, to answer your question, the first memories I have of really loving somebody was Jay Youngblood and Rick Steamboat. They were the NWA tag champions. And when Jack and Jerry Briscoe turned heel on them, I tell Jerry to this day that he's the first human being I ever hated. Because I just remember hating them. I mean, like, just as much as a little kid could summon up hatred. And I didn't have a lot of hate in my heart. I still don't. But all the hatred I have was directed toward the Briscoe brothers. And
because I could see Steamboat and Youngblood were so young and good looking, and Steamboat had the exotic kind of Hawaii surfer boy look, and Jay was the Indian, Native American, as they would say now, and he was really obviously, Hispanic, but the dark, good looks and the long hair and the bodies, and they were so flashy. I can see where they were such a good team. And I actually, her Jay Youngblood's daughter, I believe, said that she heard us saying some nice things about Youngblood. Brian, if you're over there, hadn't gone to sleep yet. Not long ago, but they were really a dynamic babyface tag team. I could see where those no good, dirty Oklahoma boys, because the Briscoes were such good heels. Explain this. The Briscoes were such good heels because they were such good wrestlers. They could be heels by out wrestling the babyfaces and doing it with a smirk. They were the only ones who could get away with it.
They would do it, but then when the babyfaces, they also gave them that great comeback.
Yeah.
So that was the thing. It's okay for a heel to be a good wrestler, and this was something I learned and had to work with a lot when I did my heel run as Gregory Helms, because I got a really extensive amateur career, which I couldn't explore as the Hurricane, so most people still to this day don't know that. You could see some of it when I was Sugar Shane. You could definitely see some of it when I was Gregory Helms, but as the Hurricane, I kind of had to wrestle down a little bit. I couldn't wrestle like I really could because it would weaken the character. That was the character that was obviously, the people wanted the comedy from the Hurricane. It wouldn't necessarily weaken it, but it would distract from it. It would definitely distract from it. And, I was noticing that on the house shows, and, Pat Patterson was a guy that was, I was working with a lot. He was an agent when I was developing the Hurricane, and, he just gave me some powerful advice about listening to the crowd. He's like, I know you want to do this and that. You want to do that and you want to do this. You listen to the crowd. Listen to the crowd. Whatever they pop for, you keep. Whatever they don't, fuck it. Exactly like that. And I was like, damn, he's right. Because I was still doing those Sugar Shane style of matches where it was move after move, counter after counter. And the crowd didn't give a shit, but not for me, they didn't. But when I start doing the pose and all this and that, that's what they wanted from me. And that taught me too, that fans are there for the entire show. They're going to see all that counter from somebody else. We had Kurt Angle on the show. They're going to see the great wrestling from him. They're going to see the kick ass from Steve Austin and all of that. But they're for me, what they want is this. And that's kind of, when I tell people I had to wrestle down, they were like, why would you do that? Because it was for the benefit of the show, and in turn, it benefited my character. So, long story short, then when I got to be Gregory Helms, the heel again, now I'm out there being that wrestling machine. I remember coming back, and Arn Anderson was like, damn, I forgot how good you were. I was like, yeah, I said, I appreciate it. Then he walked away. I was going, what the fuck? I was like, but yeah, it's did y'all forget? How did y'all forget? Y'all supposed to understand that I'm working, that I'm playing the character, but because the character got over with him. The character got over, and it started to work creative. And that's one thing. Now. That's one thing that I try to tell a lot of the guys in the seminars or whatever is not every match has to be the main event at Starrcade '86.
know your spot on the card, know whether it's worth taking a risk to your body or not, what's your reward going to be, et cetera, et cetera. All those things come into play, but don't just make every match everything you can do every time. Sometimes your job is to be on the show and do this part. But I'll tell you one thing. I liked part of the Hurricane. Sometimes we delved across that line. I'll be honest, but it's almost like I've been there too. I managed Mantar, right? It's almost like I used to call it Stockholm syndrome. Is that once you get into that, sometimes you start going too far in your own head. I actually have admitted to pitching. One time they got me hooked so far, Vince and the other guy in a creative meeting. I said, well, goddamn, if we've got Flash Funk there and then blah, 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 why don't we get Aunt Esther to be in his corner at the pay-per-view or whatever? I blurted these things out. And then they actually called. They actually called LaWanda Page, but she was too ill to travel. But it was when you get into these things sometimes. But you were able to do a great job at both. When you needed to work, you could work. When you needed to be the gimmick, you were the gimmick.
Yeah, I mean, in any writing, anybody that takes any kind of writing class, they'll tell you that, comic relief is essential writing tool. Like if you've ever read Stephen King, like this guy writes all these violent and awful, horrific stuff, but he'll still throw some jokes in there every now and then to break the tension, because you can't just sit there and read murder for 300 pages. There has to be an ebb and a flow and up and down. It's a massively important writing tool. So sometimes I'll see people and they're like, comedy doesn't make money. I'm like, you're out of your fucking mind. Comedy has made a ton of money. The biggest stars in this industry were funny as shit. Like if you look at Rock, his promos were hysterical. Austin was funny. Flair was funny. You were funny. Your promos were funny as fuck. But then it doesn't mean that you're a bozo the clown 100% of the time. You still got to go out there and get serious.
Exactly.
Is a massive, important part of entertainment.
That's what people can't get when they accuse me of saying, "Oh, Cornette did this and wrestled a turtle and funny don't draw money." Being silly doesn't draw money.
Mm-hmm.
Funny
and bad comedy. See, they leave out the word.
The bad comedy is always bad comedy, but when you're openly mocking what you're doing while you're doing it, the what do they call it? A phase that a lot of guys go through these days where they're openly mocking the wrestling business or what they're doing in it while they're doing it. That's the part that I don't understand. Memphis was always funny with Jimmy Hart or whatever. Heenan was the funniest guy, or I was the funniest guy in wrestling at one time. But it was the people believed that we were legitimately who we were, and we were saying all these horrible things about people they liked. I'm sure you might have wanted to strangle me at one point for things I might have said about the Rock and Roll Express when you were 12.
Yeah.
But the point is,
you hit him with a couple good jabs in your career.
You have to be serious about doing what you're doing instead of winking at people while you're doing it. And so much of the comedy as now is being written and forced on guys, or is just silliness that they come up with that they've lost. It's not the cheetah segment in the Tarzan movie anymore. They're just making fun of what they're doing. Yeah.
I mean, you definitely got people like that, and I mean, not to counterpoint that at all, but there is a little small bit of fans that like that. How many of them there are? There are some fans that like to see that shit. It's not only has the business completely changed, but as the audience has changed too. It's like, there are some people. I was talking to Steve Austin when the Will Ospreay and Ricochet, and I always bring that match up because it was really a dynamic match. And he asked me what I thought about it, and I said it was kung fu. Some people like kung fu, so that's what I took. I like watching a kung fu movie. I've never watched a kung fu movie and said I'm gonna use that in a real fight. I never have. But that's okay. If these people are there to see kung fu, then give them a little kung fu. I like a little bit different, but I also like the variety. So every now and then, when I watched Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, it wasn't like I was so going, oh, this is fake. This is so unbelievable. I just accepted it for what it was. And I mean, it's like anything. You got to be with pro wrestling. It's all about how much craziness are you willing to accept? How much nonsense are you willing to accept? Because at 7 years of an amateur with 22 gold medals, not one time did I do a collar and elbow lockup. Not one time did I do a figure four or put anybody in the DDT or do any of that thing. There's a lot of silliness that.
But they're doing the power bomb in the UFC now. They're doing the power bomb in the UFC now. But no, I get
seen a power bomb. I seen a power bomb in a Greco-Roman match in 1990, and the dude's hip came out of place.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Was it Dr. Death? Maybe no.
No, it wasn't Dr. Death.
But no, okay. Well, then, and also you've trained guys or helped train guys. You've done seminars. You've been an agent here recently. My issue is that there is an audience now, especially more than ever before, for those various kinds of wrestling that may be non-traditional. How was that for a Cornette being diplomatic for once? The problem is I don't know that they can all coexist without one making the other one less attractive. And I think when you parody something so far at some point, I mean, with the invisible hand grenade crowd is where I'm going here.
Yeah.
When you parody something so far, you destroy the hard work that the other guys put into it, that in most cases is harder on their bodies, but it could be more lucrative mainstream if they are rewarded by it. And so how do you give guys advice these days to try to straddle the middle, to take advantage of the new niche audiences, but at the same time, you got to have some respect for the concept of what you're doing?
Yeah, I don't really know if you can ever control that. I think that happens in movies too. I think when you have those movies like Scary Movie, which all they do is just make fun of horror movies and trash them. Not necessarily trash them, but all they do is make fun of them. That kind of hurts the horror industry a little bit. That's that argument. But does that mean they're not allowed to do that? Obviously they're allowed to do that, and they do. And it kind of just depends on the audience. I don't think that it should hurt everybody, but it may. And I just don't know if it's anything that we can control, though. So
it was easier before YouTube. Because now anybody can see anything now. I think that's my biggest problem with a lot of people is if they did this in the privacy of their own, if they're in Bolivia on tour. We used to get away with a lot of shit when we were on tour in fucking Bolivia or somewhere, or Greenville, Mississippi. How does it fit? You had a brief period, not as brief as mine. I think I've got you there on TNA. You had a brief period as an agent. How is it different on the other side of the camera finally as you get to be in the administrative phase of your career, starting to tell other guys what to do? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I liked it a lot more than I thought I was. When they first offered me the position the first night, I said no. Not no that I didn't want to do it, but no, I wasn't sure, because I know they were looking for agents, and a couple guys suggested my name, and I think my name just started being mentioned quite a bit. I've been running Omega, which was in North Carolina, and I was booking that, agenting the whole show, and we really kind of changed the landscape of North Carolina. Now we went from having a bunch of not necessarily bad indies, but some that could definitely be a lot better. And with Omega, I put out a mission statement I want you guys to watch us do and just make your shit better. There's no need for these garbage feds to be out there. And if you're a garbage fed, get better. I'm not saying shut down, get better. Stop booking people that suck. That was my number one rule of booking. Don't book people that suck. It should be much more than that, and that just kind of led to, Hurricane's really doing some good stuff in this one indie that's drawing, I guess we were averaging 1,200 people over the course of however many shows we've done. Sometimes more than that, sometimes less, but that was good for an indie, and really good crowds, and production was good and everything. And it just kind of led to that. And I go down to TNA, and I know my first day there, they said, we're not going to give you any matches today. Just walk around and see where you can help and interject yourself. So I went right to the main event.
There you go.
And I was just listening to them, and I helped a suggestion that they ended up using for the finish of the main event. And then there was a couple other things, and that was my first night, my first day there. And there's a couple little things else I helped with. So the next day I'm talking to them, and it's like, yeah, we like what you did. If you want to do it, let's, we'll offer you a deal. And they offered me a deal on the second day. And I told them, I said, let's wait. let's see if I really like this, because I mean, it's one thing to be able to have good ideas here and there, but can you do it on a consistent basis? And I just didn't want to commit to anything I wasn't sure of right away. So, but it worked out. I worked hard. I'm really still passionate about wrestling. And as an agent, I bring something really different to the table than most agents, in that I've kind of done a little bit of everything when you talk about what kind of matches are out there and what kind of, like, I've been a wrestler, I've been a character, I've been a gimmick, whereas a lot of agents were really good at their one thing, so I brought a diversity to it. There's very little situations that creative could give me for a match that I hadn't been in myself, so I could dig back on what worked for me.
I found also in OVW during my time there, it was always great to have guys come in that were transitioning to agenting while they could still actually get in the ring and just do a couple of things. Because at one point there in the WWF, we had, like Jack Lanza had been retired for 20 years. And I mean, he could probably still kick everybody's ass, but he wasn't going to get in the ring. And so it helps when there's guys of the next generation up rather than a couple generations removed, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and you want guys that actually pay attention to the business and still watch and still seeing what's going on. I was taken because I didn't have a lot of bad experience with agents, but I did have some, and I think everybody can say that, that's been with WWE. But I caught on that there were certain agents that had strengths. Like if you were a heel, you wanted Arn Anderson as your agent. If you were a babyface, you wanted Steamboat. You didn't necessarily want it reversed. If you were that babyface, On, which I love On, this isn't a jab, but On didn't really get the Hurricane, Yeah, well, it was never a character, never a gimmick. So,
but you've Arn was pretty much a lifelong heel and one of the best ever. And there's Steamboat, who was a actual lifelong babyface, never healed a day in his life. So he's the epitome, but he was an artiste in that role. So you played people's strengths.
Yeah, but like I was going to, if you're a heel and you got Steamboat, it's going to be a little, it's going to be a little bit, vice versa. If you needed a real tricky spot, you go to Dean Malenko. So I was, that taught me I wanted to be somebody that could help him out no matter what, because I was able to do real good heel shit when I was Gregory Helms. I was having people storm the ring on me when I was Gregory Helms. I became at that,
and that was just your family.
And that was my family, we had some unsettled shit that needed to go down. And so that was my strength as an agent. I don't want to turn this into a resume for myself, but that was my strength as an agent, that, I just brought a lot to the table in terms of what I knew and how I could help. And I was helping guys on their promos. Tell me, say your promo to me. Let me try to help you out. And I was helping guys on entrances, because entrances are so important. And, TNA didn't have the production budget of WWE to do all these elaborate things. So I was trying to help guys just figure out a way. But
you know what? Here's the thing. And to your point, even if you're in and I'm not trying to knock now TNA's production, but even if you're in a low budget production, not TNA, but something, a low budget production or a medium budget production or whatever, if you as a talent study what television is and watch television and see where the camera angles are and go out in the building beforehand and find your hard camera and find your floor cameras and know how to work to them instead of just the people in the arena when you're on television. And on interviews, when you watch the tally lights and know to turn from your attention from one to the other, those are things that every talent can do. They don't even have to be able to wrestle, but they can sure be like, in Ring of Honor, we spend half our time chasing the guys on their TV entrances with the floor cameras to get a shot of their face. It was insane.
I believe it. Well, and that was something too that I learned from WWE, because I was I became friends with the camera guys, not with an agenda, but because I would see them all the time. I'm just that type of person. I would strike up conversations, and because I knew them, I would start to play to them a little bit, and that taught me how to play the cameras. So I would use that as an agent too. Dave Sahadi was the production.
Oh, I love Dave. Yeah,
Dave's super talented. And so I would get with him all the time. It's like, okay, there's some stuff that's going to happen, and I'm going to need a camera guy over here. So he'll say, okay, that'll be camera 3. So fast forward to the match, I'm on headset, and I'm like, Dave, I need camera 3. And so he would talk to me after that, and it's like, can you get the other guys to call matches like you do? And I'm like, nope, that's going to be something you have to ask, because it cannot come from me. And this is the first time I've ever told that story because I didn't want to sound like a dick because I respected the other agents, but like some of them would just be like, all right, this guy's, it's going to be a power bomb or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And the camera guys are like, where do you want us to be? The camera guys just kind of need to be.
I got one for you. I won't mention any names, right? But during my tenure there, Dave and Keith Mitchell had asked me to be the agent to sit in the seat that you're talking about, to warn them of the upcoming things and et cetera, because one of the other agents' favorite phrases was, shoot him. Yeah. Who the fuck is him? It's just right. Excited, right? It just shoot him. Oh shit. What? And in that moment, you need to understand television and wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah. And you gotta, it's an agent's thing is you get, it's kind of like 3 parts. You get from creative what they want. So now you got to go explain it to the talent. And that sometimes can be difficult because sometimes it's going to be some shit they don't want to do. And I still spoke the language of the boys too. I still understand that. I understand being that talent that you're better than what they're giving you that night. You are.
How can we make this same point in the fashion that you enjoy, sir?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm just telling them, listen, and I would go, listen, I know this sucks for you tonight, but we need this because we're going here and it will all be explained later, that sort of thing. So you got that. That's the first part. You go to the boys and you explain to them. You're that middleman, which can suck sometimes being that middleman. All right, now the second part is put the match together, helping them, having some creative advice. If they need it, sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. If they don't, awesome. If you don't need anything from me, man, God bless you. That makes my job easier. And there was sometimes you got to let the artist be the artist too. If say Kurt Angle's there, I know from a wrestling standpoint, there's going to be very little I need to tell Kurt Angle.
Yeah.
But there might be something the camera's not going to be able to pick that up. I can't throw that in there. And when you got a guy like Kurt that will appreciate it. You have some guys that will have the ego and they'll be like, whatever, but because the guys even with guys, the main event level like Kurt, where you really get crucial at that point is if they've got a gimmick that's under the ring, you not only got to make sure they know which post to look for, but you got to make sure that the crew knows not let anybody move it. And you got to tell the floor cameraman, we need this exact shot, because if you don't, you're going to see the fucking deal. Sometimes the main event matches, if the talent does everything in the ring themselves, but you still have, a horrible time trying to get all that miscellaneous shit confirmed between the wrestling side and the television truck. Yeah, sometimes it's the little detailed things, and that's fine. If I'm having to fix big problems, we have a much bigger problem. It's always the little things that agents should have to worry about, and that's part of the job. And it gets frustrating sometimes, and it gets sometimes for the talent. I know it gets frustrating when you got an agent worrying about little shit, but it does make it better. The devil is always in the details.
Yeah.
If I got to sit there and explain psychology of a match to you, then we got a much bigger problem than this particular match that night. But so anyway, that's the second part, getting the match together. Now the third part, you got to go be in that seat and you got to be able to translate through headset to the production truck the story and what we're going to do tonight and what needs to be caught on camera. So it is, being an agent, there's a lot of levels to it. So, but I enjoyed the hell out of it. And, I was damn good at it. I will say that I was damn good at it, but unfortunately, somebody wanted to give my job to their friend, and that's kind of what happened.
No, I cannot believe that something like that has ever happened in the history of the professional wrestling industry.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter that his friend was less talented, less successful, less experienced. None of that mattered. It was his buddy, and so there you go.
I still have never heard such a story to ever take place in the wrestling industry. Yep. You have in the wrestling industry portrayed a superhero for much of your life, and how much of that was influenced, or how much help did you get? Because you're a big comic freak like me. Before I even got in wrestling, I was a comic collector. You should come to Lexicon sometime. But you were a comic fan, right?
Yeah, I read comics. I got introduced to them when my parents got divorced when I was 5, and so when I was 5, we got introduced to my stepmother. My stepmother's brother, who is my uncle, he had a comic collection. So when I was 5 going on 6, you know, I would go to his house and he had these, you know, these comic books. And like, man, I just really got immersed into it, man. It really progressed my reading level as a kid. You know, it helped me out like in terms of that, but I was just like kind of fascinated by it. And I never let anybody, you know how kids are. They'll pick on you if you read comics. That shit never bothered me at all. You know? I mean, back then wrestling was the redneck sport, you know, and comics were for nerds. So like now you fast forward to 2018, wrestling is still a global phenomenon still. The comic industry, it dominates Hollywood. So like, my whole childhood is justified. It's just justified and verified and, you know, cemented. Like all the bullshit I put up with as a kid, you know, is totally validated now. But I always read books. Were you a DC guy or a Marvel guy? Because you got the Green Lantern, right? I was both. I was all companies. I even had some indie comics. My uncle had indie comics from, you know, old school indie comics, you know, like Mega Man and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, old school. Yeah, old school. You're talking to a senior citizen here.
I forget. Sometimes I'm generally the older guy in the conversation these days. But I was never one of those that had to pick teams. I've never been like that. You know, even though I grew up on NWA, like when I finally saw WWF, I never felt like I had to be one or the other. Yeah. I don't understand why people do that, but you know, people are people. The mob mentality kind of rules, so it is what it is. But I was the same thing with comics. There were some from DC that were awesome, some from Marvel that were awesome, and I just liked what I liked. You know, the Green Lantern thing was I liked the mythos of the willpower, and that was kind of like what the Green Lantern was about, was willpower. And being a small kid, smallest kid on the wrestling team, smallest kid on the football team, you know. We were a white family in a black trailer park at one time. So there's a lot of stuff I kind of had to deal with. I had to fight a lot as a kid. Definitely had to fight in pro wrestling when I first started because nobody wanted to work with little guys back then. So I would be in little shoot fights all the fucking time. So, you know, willpower was just kind of something that, you know, I had to have. If I didn't have it, I wouldn't have made it. So I always loved that. And that's why I got the Green Lantern tattoo.
I liked because I had the OCD even when I was a kid, and I was a completionist. So I played Marvel, DC, anything, Charlton, Gold Key, Archie, whatever it was. That's why I'm still inundated with comic books. But my first exposure to them, I've told a story, was when I was like 6 years old. My aunt gives me my cousin's box of comics, and there's all the early Silver Age Marvels. Avengers #1 and Journey to Mystery 83 are on top of the box, right? Mm-hmm. And just all this classic stuff. And I got hooked in it. It's like anything, I guess maybe it was preparation for wrestling because it was the hero that tried to overcome the villain. It just sometimes those villains we didn't have outer space villains in those days in wrestling. Now we do. We got some now, I'm sure, but you know, so it was like you said, it was a primer for wrestling.
Yeah. And I mean, it was so much more fascinating than the cowboy stuff I would see on TV, you know, and not to knock that. I don't want JR to hear this. And but John Wayne, and now we got but it was more creative, definitely more inventive, you know, and just more fascinating overall. So,
because when you think about it, all the cowboys basically look like the cowboys, and all the Indians basically look like the Indians. But you got the Thing and the Submariner and Iron Man. That's a full card of gimmicks. That's a full roster of gimmicks right there. Yeah. When you got the Marvel and DC universe.
And I tell you what's funny, I started sympathizing with heels in comics a little bit too. You know, like I did. It was a parallel. You know, because I remember being enraged when Hogan beat Savage at WrestleMania 5. I definitely wanted Savage to win. I always compare that to I don't know how much you know about DC, but there's a character named Black Adam, and he's the antithesis of a superhero they got called Captain Marvel. Yes, and it never made any sense why Black would get beat. And I was just getting frustrated. And all of a sudden I'm developing the sympathy for the heel. And I want this Black Adam guy who overall is probably my favorite character of all time. And it happened because how the Marvel family kept beating him. And I'm like, this don't make no damn sense. He should kick their ass. And it would drive me nuts. And how ironic is it, or I guess not ironic, but coincidental that, The Rock, who was my nemesis, is going to be Black Adam in a movie. Yes, that's amazing to me.
That's perfect. And also, it is sort of like an early real life Daniel Bryan type of thing where the people are willing the guy to get over whether the office wants him to or not.
Oh, once I popped as you're like this, then so once I popped this hurricane, I'm getting some steam, this is how I got my first hurricane shirt, because people started wearing Green Lantern shirts to the shows, and because I didn't have any merchandise.
Yeah, they didn't give you a shirt yet.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of little guys got merch. Jim, you might not know this, but I think I'm the first like single act. You had guys like Spike Dudley was a part of the Dudley Boys, and he was there a little bit before me, and X-Pac was a part of DX. But as far as a single act, I'm like the first 200-pounder or whatever in that range to make money for Vince.
Yeah,
in terms of merchandise, So, and everything is an experiment. So if the hurricane had failed, that might have been bad news for other little guys that came down after the pike. You know what I mean? So, but luckily I didn't. But anyway, there's Green Lantern shirts on, and I'm standing beside Vince because we're about to film something, and we're watching a monitor in his Green Lantern shirts. And he looked at it, he goes, "Is that your tattoo?" And I go, "Yeah." I said, "Those Green Lantern shirts." I said, "They're wearing those because I don't have any." And I just kind of looked at him, and I waited for him. He goes, "Well, maybe we need a hurricane shirt." And I go, just saying. And next thing you know, dude, next week, merchandise guys talking to me. So all the Green Lantern fans out there really helped out my career a lot. And but anyway, DC Comics started noticing that too, and so I get a phone call. They invite me to the office, dude. They just showered me with gifts. They gave me boxes and boxes of swag and all this type of stuff.
You asshole. I wrote a fan letter one time to Marvel, and I got a postcard signed by Stan Lee, and I thought it was like my most treasured possession. You're in the office getting free shit up there.
Free shit, yeah. And then the guy that's writing the Justice Society is a guy named Jeff Johns, and he's big honcho at DC. Helps out with a lot of their books, and really terrific writer. And so he had a website. I went to his message board one time and I said, "Give Black Adam a push." And I put it on his message board. And I put www.shanehelms.com. And I was like, "No, this ain't really you." And I said, "Go to my website." And I went to my website right away and put "Give Black Adam a push." And that was like the front page of my website for like a week. Next thing you know, Black Adam's he's in the Justice Society, and a big part of the story. So I'm not saying I had a lot to do with it, but maybe I helped a little bit, and I'll take that.
A lot of people saying it. You just don't know it to be true.
Yeah. Hey, I'll tell you a Stan Lee story real quick though. We finally met at Houston Comic Con a couple years ago, 2 years ago, and I did a couple Comic Cons with him, but it's like either he was there on Friday and I was there on Saturday, or vice versa. We never really crossed paths, And of course, Stan Lee's, if you're a comic fan, he's very influential in your life, whether you realize it or not. Obviously, he's influential in both of our lives. I've been a superhero on TV for years. I got to meet Stan Lee, but we never got to do it. So anyway, at Houston, and for whatever reason, this was Hurricane's Comic Con, because you know how appearances are. Sometimes you do great, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you do run of the mill. For whatever reason, Houston loved the Hurricane. So I'm super over at this Comic Con. And so the people that are running the place, coming down, and now, hey, you need some water, you need a Coke, you need a hot dog. When you're doing good business for them, they're super friendly. And I was like, well, I've never met Stan Lee. I said, any way you guys can make this happen? And I was like, we got you. I was like, oh yeah. And so I go to meet Stan. Now here's what I got to tell you, that I had my woman with me, and you've seen Karen, and very beautiful,
the Empress. The
Empress. And when she's got those heels on, she's probably 6'2" in the heels.
Yeah.
And she's got one of my Hurricane shirts, and it's all cut up and tied tight at the waist, and the gimmicks are popping, and she's a head turner anyway. But now she's dolled up too. And so there I am in full Hurricane outfit, got her beside me. I'm walking to go shake Stan Lee's hand. He gives me like the Heisman Trophy pie to the face, pushes me right out of the way, scoops Karen in her arms for a deep ass hug. And there I am tumbling in the background. It was such a huge pop. He's like, I don't want to meet you. I want to meet her.
Well, Stan's only 93 or 4 or whatever. He's still got some fire left in the furnace.
Got a little fire. I told Karen, like, baby, you might have to take one for the team. We just got to do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank our guest.
But he was super funny about it. But it was just great delivery, you know.
That position now, my childhood. That would be wrong. Oh my God! But I want to thank you. We will not take up more of your day because you have superhero things to go out and do, and also my Empress has just wandered in with Harley Quinn to discuss where I might be. I'm closed up in my office again. I'm cult casting to the millions and millions. But Shane, thank you. I appreciate you being on the program. What's your guy? Everybody should follow you on Twitter. Give them your Twitter.
It's at Shane Helms Com. You know, Shane SHANE, Helms HELMS, Com COM. And that's because my website, ShaneHelms.com. I got the longest wrestler run website in the history of wrestling. And my Instagram is Shane Helms.com, Facebook. I keep it all the same for everybody, you know, make it easy on me.
I'm detecting a trend here, but that's what I've followed you for so long. I just follow Shane Helms. I couldn't tell you what you were, but Shane Helms.com.
One of my favorite things is when people actually tweet me at Shane Helms.com and ask me, what is my website?
Well, you know, but there's a dot in there which throws people all the fuck off.
It does throw people off, but I'm like, I bet if you try really hard, you can figure it out.
And you were a pioneer of that too, right? How long have you had this site?
Dude, I went to college for computer programming too. There was a time when I was doing the indies where I was going to college full time, had a job full time, and I was working every weekend. So wrestling was what I wanted without a doubt, but I was preparing for in case it didn't work out. And I had a website when it was just message boards, when you had to do the dial-up message boards. And then I think it was GeoCities or whatever, however it was pronounced. I think it was when it first became. And as soon as you could buy domain names, I bought ShaneHelms.com right away. And I had it for a couple years on the indies. I was the only one that had one, you know, and even in WCW, I think like a couple guys had one, but nobody really did it themselves. WWE actually linked my website on my profile page for quite a while until they started really policing it. And then when MySpace became a thing, I was the first pro wrestler on MySpace, if you remember that site. I actually had my MySpace page linked off of WWE.com. They would put it up because they didn't really know what social media was back then. Nobody did.
Oh, I know when I did like one of those first Cornette's commentaries on Bite This, they had like 57 people listening to some of those things. It was ridiculous. Nobody knew what was going on, and then suddenly it just blew up.
But I had conversations with you know, Stephanie and Johnny and them, telling them what Twitter was, and I think this is going to be big, and you know, just kind of, I just remember having those conversations and they didn't really go anywhere. And I was like, okay, well, you know, whatever, I tried. And then fast forward all these years later, you know.
Who's ever going to use that type of thing? Oh, my God.
Well, no, I never expected it to be such a global thing that it is now. But, you know, you give people an outlet to express themselves, and believe it or not, they're going to do it. And there's good in that and there's bad in that. But that's the world.
But don't be so modest. You've been able to predict everything, so we should listen to you. When you prognosticate for the future, from now on, listen to Hurricane Helms. He knows what he's talking about.
But that's the thing.
I'll do it. I'll Twitter stock.
I'll do it before it gets hot. That's the thing. I keep coming up with these great ideas, and then I'll stop doing it, and somebody else will come in and make a bunch of money out of it. I'm like, damn, I really should have stuck with that.
Ladies and gentlemen, until next week. We want to thank our guest today, Hurricane Helms. Follow him at ShaneHelms.com on Twitter and all the other things that are exactly the same. And in honor of him today, instead of our normal close, we should close this way. In brightest day and blackest night, no evil shall escape his sight. For those who worship evil's might, beware his power. The Hurricane's Twitter. And we'll see you next week, everybody, when part 2 with Jim Ross and more here on the Jim Cornette Experience for Shane and Brian and me. We'll see you next week.